The email arrived just after midnight. Its subject line froze my blood. Call me immediately, urgent. It was from Jonathan Hayes, my longtime lawyer and friend. For years, Jonathan had handled my estate, my late wife's trust, and the complex matters left behind after her sudden death 3 years ago. We hadn't spoken for weeks, but his message came with a weight that made my hands tremble before I even clicked it open. Call me immediately. It's about your son. That was all. No greeting, no details, just those words. My heart lurched. I stared at the phone lying next to me on the nightstand, its dark screen reflecting my pale, aging face. My son, Ethan, was 32. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. The last conversation we had ended with shouting, mine filled with disappointment, his with resentment. He'd walked out, leaving behind the echo of my words, "You'll regret this someday." And now, maybe that day had come. I called Jonathan immediately. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered, "Martin." "Yes, it's me," I said, my throat tight. "What's going on? What happened to Ethan?" Jonathan hesitated, a sound that sent dread coursing through me. "I'm so sorry to tell you this over the phone," he began slowly, "but Ethan was found dead this evening." The world stopped. My breathing turned shallow, every heartbeat louder than the last. "No, that's not possible," I whispered. "There must be some mistake." "I wish there were," he said softly. "He was found in his apartment. The police are treating it as suspicious." I felt as if someone had reached inside me and ripped something vital out. I stumbled back into my chair, gripping the armrest until my knuckles whitened. "Suspicious," I managed. "You mean, someone killed him?" "They're not certain yet," Jonathan said. "There was no forced entry, but there were signs of a struggle. The police are still investigating. They'll want to talk to you tomorrow." My chest ached as 1,000 memories of Ethan flooded back, his laughter as a boy, his stubborn streak as a teenager, the cold distance that grew after his mother's death. I'd blamed him unfairly for not being there enough, for drowning himself in work while I drowned in grief. Now, all the words I hadn't said weighed on me like stones. "What else do you know?" I asked after a long silence. Jonathan sighed. "That's the terrible part one mentioned. There's something you should see. Ethan left a sealed letter addressed to you. It was found in his desk, and he'd left instructions in his will that it be delivered to you immediately if anything happened to him." My breath caught. "A letter?" "Yes," he said. "I have it in my possession. It's strange. The wording of his will changed only 2 months ago, and he seemed insistent about making sure that note reached you." The sound of rain tapping against my window grew louder, each drop like a metronome marking the seconds since my world had cracked open. "When can I see it?" "I'll bring it first thing in the morning," Jonathan replied. "And, Martin, brace yourself." I read the opening line. It's not easy to read. "There's something he wanted you to know about before he died." "Before he died," I repeated numbly. The phrase felt surreal, impossible. My son, dead. When the call ended, the house seemed to grow darker, emptier. I sat there for hours, staring into the shadows, waiting for dawn, waiting for an explanation that might never come. The memories wouldn't stop. Ethan helping his mother plant roses, the way he'd avoided my eyes at her funeral, and the hollow silence of every missed birthday since. Around 4 a.m., I made coffee, though I barely tasted it. I needed to understand. I needed to know what Ethan had been hiding, or who had wanted him gone. By the time Jonathan's black sedan pulled into my driveway that morning, the sky was gray, heavy with clouds. He stepped out holding a leather briefcase and an envelope in his hand, thick, cream-colored paper sealed with dark red wax. "Here it is," he said quietly, placing it on the table. My name, Martin Hale, was written in Ethan's careful handwriting. I stared at it, unable to move. My fingers hovered over the seal, afraid of what truths waited inside. "Did you read it?" I asked. "No," Jonathan said firmly. "I wouldn't. It's yours to open." With trembling hands, I broke the wax and unfolded the paper. The first line sent chills down my spine. "Greater than, Dad, if you're reading this, it means the people I trusted finally found me. And it also means what I've been hiding from you could destroy everything you thought you knew about Mom's death." The room tilted. I looked up at Jonathan, my voice barely a whisper. "He's saying, your mother's death." Jonathan's eyes darkened. "I told you this would be terrible." The paper shook in my hand as I read on, the words burning into my mind. Ethan's letter was more than a farewell, it was a confession. And whatever secret he'd carried for years had now come home to me, demanding to be uncovered. As I reached the bottom of the first page, The final words before the letter cut off mid-sentence made my heart stop cold. Greater than, if anything happens to me, don't trust. The ink trailed off there, smudged, as if someone had stopped him before he could finish. And that was the moment I realized, Ethan hadn't just died. He'd been silenced. The unfinished line haunted me for hours. Don't trust, who was Ethan warning me about? The police, Jonathan, a friend. Every possibility twisted like a knife inside me. Jonathan sat quietly across the table, watching my face pale as I reread the letter again and again. There's something else, he said finally. Ethan's apartment was ransacked. Whoever did it was looking for something specific. His laptop, hard drives, even his safe, all gone. I clenched my jaw. Did the police find any prints? He shook his head. Nothing conclusive. But there was one thing left behind, a small silver USB drive taped beneath his desk. The detective in charge gave it to me since your name was listed on the file label. Jonathan reached into his briefcase and set the flash drive on the table. My pulse quickened as I picked it up. Written in Ethan's handwriting were the words, "For Dad, only if I'm gone." Jonathan continued, "We can open it together, but we should be careful. If Ethan was scared, he might have been involved in something dangerous." I plugged it into my laptop. A single file appeared. Truth about mom.mp4. My fingers trembled as I double-clicked it. The video began with Ethan's weary face staring into the camera. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair unkempt, his voice low and uneven. Greater than, Dad, if you're watching this, I didn't die by accident. I've been digging into Mom's death, and what I found isn't what we were told. It wasn't a car crash. It was murder. I froze. Murder. I whispered. Greater than, Mom was investigating a fraud case in her company, the same law firm that handled your trust, Dad. She found irregularities in accounts tied to one name, Jonathan Hayes. When she confronted him, she told me he threatened to ruin our family if she exposed him. That same week, her brakes failed. The police called it an accident. But I know better. I turned slowly toward Jonathan. His face had drained of color. That's absurd, he said, his voice trembling with forced calm. He's making wild accusations. I loved your wife like family. I paused the video, glaring at him. Then explain why your name's on it, Jonathan. Explain why my wife is dead. And my son is too. He stood up, running a hand through his hair. Martin, listen to me. Ethan was unstable after his mother's death. He blamed me because I was the executor of her estate. He thought everyone was lying. You know how grief twists the mind. But something in his eyes flickered. Fear, not outrage. Sit down, I said coldly. We're finishing this video. I hit play again. Greater than, Dad, if you confront him, be careful. He's powerful, connected, and dangerous. I found proof he's been laundering money through offshore accounts. I've copied everything to multiple drives. One is with me. The other I hid in the old family cabin. You'll know where to look. Under the floorboard beneath Mom's piano. Then Ethan's expression turned desperate. Greater than, if I don't make it out, promise me you'll finish what Mom started. Don't trust anyone, not even the police. Jonathan's reach goes further than you think. The video ended abruptly. I sat frozen, my hands trembling violently. Jonathan broke the silence first, his voice barely audible. That's not real. He edited that, Martin. It's a setup. But I'd known Jonathan for 20 years. I could read every tick, every twitch of his jaw. And right now, his fear was genuine, not of being accused, but of being caught. Leave, I said quietly. Now. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then grabbed his briefcase and stormed out without another word. I watched his car speed down the road, tires screeching against the wet pavement. As soon as he was gone, I locked every door and window, then sat in the silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound left in the house. My mind raced. Could Ethan really be right? Could Jonathan, the man I'd trusted with my finances, my will, my wife's estate, have killed her? I drove to the cabin that night. It was deep in the woods, the same place we'd spent summers when Ethan was a child. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind through the trees felt like a whisper from the past. Inside, the piano still stood in the corner, draped in a dusty sheet. My hands shook as I pulled it back. Beneath the old pedals, I found the wooden floorboard Ethan had mentioned. I pried it loose with a screwdriver. There it was, a small black hard drive sealed in a plastic bag. My heart pounded as I plugged it into my laptop. Dozens of files appeared. Bank statements, wire transfers, offshore account lists, all linked to Jonathan Hayes and several shell corporations. One file stood out, a scanned police report from the night of my wife's death. Her car had been serviced 2 days prior, by a company owned by one of Jonathan's associates. The brake lines had been tampered with. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer. Ethan was right. My wife hadn't died by accident. She'd been silenced. And now, Ethan was dead for uncovering it. I sat there in the dark, shaking with rage and grief. My son had died trying to bring justice for his mother. That night, I made a decision. If the law couldn't bring Jonathan down, I would. I packed the hard drive, the letter, and Ethan's USB into a sealed envelope and wrote one line on it: "If I don't make it back, give this to the press." As dawn broke over the lake, I got into my car, the evidence sitting beside me. I dialed Jonathan's number one last time. When he answered, I said, "We need to talk, face to face." He hesitated. "Martin, that's not a good idea. It's not a request," I said. "Meet me at my wife's grave in an hour." There was silence, then a faint, resigned sigh. "All right," he said quietly. "But if you're coming after me, you'd better be sure about what you think you know." "I am," I said. "And you should be scared." The cemetery was quiet when I arrived. A pale morning mist curled around the tombstones, softening the world into gray silence. My wife's grave lay near the willow tree by the fence, a place she'd once said made her feel closer to peace. I stood there with the envelope clutched in my hand, the hard drive and letter inside, the weight of truth pressing against my palm. Jonathan's black car appeared minutes later, gliding through the fog like a shadow. He stepped out, wearing a dark coat and the same controlled expression he always used when negotiating, composed, confident, dangerous. "Martin," he said quietly, walking toward me. "You shouldn't have come here." I didn't move. "You killed them," I said flatly. "You killed my wife. And you killed my son to keep me from finding out." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "Those are strong accusations. You think you can prove any of that?" "I don't need to," I said, lifting the envelope. "Ethan did. The evidence is in here: bank accounts, tampered reports, offshore transfers. Everything. I've already made copies." His eyes flickered with something cold. "You shouldn't play this game, Martin. You don't understand the kind of people involved. I didn't act alone. Your wife, she got too close to something she wasn't supposed to see. I tried to warn her." My stomach turned. "Warn her?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "She discovered the firm was laundering money for politicians. She thought she could expose them. I told her to walk away, but she refused. I didn't cut her brake line, but I didn't stop the man who did. Sometimes survival demands silence." I stared at him in horror. "And Ethan, what did survival demand then?" Jonathan's face hardened. "He wouldn't stop digging. He contacted one of our partners, tried to blackmail them into confessing. They panicked. It wasn't supposed to go that far." Something inside me broke. For years, I'd trusted this man, invited him to family dinners, shared grief with him, believed his every word. Now, standing by my wife's grave, I saw him for what he truly was: a man who'd built his career on deceit and blood. "You destroyed my family," I said through clenched teeth. He sighed. "It's not personal, Martin. You were just collateral damage. Give me the envelope. Walk away, and I'll make sure you live out the rest of your years comfortably." I laughed bitterly. "You think you can buy my silence now? You killed my son. There's no price for that." His hand slipped into his coat pocket, and for a split second, I saw the glint of metal. "I don't want to hurt you," he said softly. "But you've left me no choice." Before I could react, he raised the gun. The sound of the shot tore through the still air, but it wasn't aimed at me. A second gunshot followed, echoing off the stones. Jonathan staggered backward, shock frozen on his face as red bloomed across his chest. He collapsed beside the grave, his eyes wide with disbelief. Behind him stood Detective Laura Jennings, the officer assigned to Ethan's case. She lowered her weapon, her expression grim. "I had a feeling you'd come here," she said, her voice steady. I stared at her in confusion. "How did you?" She nodded toward my pocket. "You emailed me last night. The one with Ethan's files attached. I got here just in time. I'd almost forgotten. In my desperation before leaving the cabin, I'd sent everything to her address with one line: if I don't make it back, follow the truth." She knelt beside Jonathan's body, checking his pulse, then shook her head. "He's gone." The rain began to fall softly again, dripping from the willow leaves onto the earth. I turned toward my wife's grave, tears finally breaking free. It's over, I whispered. They can rest now. Laura placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Your son was brave, Mr. Hale. He gave his life for the truth. You both did the right thing. The following weeks passed in a blur of police statements, hearings, and newspaper headlines. The story spread fast. Prominent attorney exposed in corruption scandal and double murder investigation. Jonathan's files led to a network of high-ranking officials. Arrests followed, including executives from his law firm. The world that had silenced my family began to crumble. Ethan's name became the symbol of courage, a man who'd died trying to uncover his mother's killers. His video, released to the public, played across news stations everywhere. Watching it again broke me each time, but it also filled me with pride. Months later, I stood once more at the cemetery, the sun low on the horizon. Two names now rested side by side, Lydia Hale and Ethan Hale. Between them, I placed a single white rose. I did what you asked, son, I murmured. They know the truth now. You were right about everything. The wind moved softly through the trees, and for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. But just as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I frowned and pulled it out. The screen displayed a new message, from an unknown number. Unknown. You shouldn't have gone this far. It's not over. My chest tightened. I looked around, scanning the empty road, the silent graves, the drifting mist. The number traced back to no one. For a long moment, I stood frozen. Then, slowly, I slipped the phone into my pocket and whispered, "Come for me, then. I'm done running." As I walked away, the wind carried the faint sound of the piano from the cabin in my memory, a melody Lydia used to play, soft and haunting. I didn't know if the message was a threat or a warning, but I did know one thing. The truth was out, and the people behind it were afraid. Ethan had started something that couldn't be buried again. And I would spend whatever time I had left making sure it stayed that way.